The No Nonsense Roundtable. It's a weekly show broadcast on Rochester, New York's 50,000-watt iHeartRadio station, News Radio Wham 1180. The host, Dom Geneva, interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. What you are about to hear is a recording of a previous broadcast without the breaks and commercials. Now, here's host, Dom Geneva.
My guest is a very interesting individual, and I've talked to him a couple of times this week, and I found out that we have a lot in common. And his name is Karl LaPorta, and Karl, I'm going to just list these things we have in common. We're about the same age. We've learned that we both have wonderful wives we've been married to for a long time. We both have two daughters about the same ages. We're Italian, and the two of us know what our name spelled backward is. So that your email address is your name backward, and my name I've always known is backward is Cinema Advantage, which is Don. So we have that in common, but that's about what we have in common. That's sort of where it ends, because you are the founder of the Rochester Music Hall of Fame, which I know very little about. And the other thing, we're not going to be really talking about this, is that you love gardening, and that's really not my thing. But you have been a Rochesterian that has made an effect on Rochester through the Music Hall of Fame. You have a wonderful story, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Dom. It's a real pleasure.
Let's talk a little bit about being raised in Rochester. I think your experience is a little bit the same as mine. You were born and raised in years ago in the 50s, 60s, and whatever. And what was your life like back then?
Well, actually, it was many years ago. But yeah, I was raised in the city in a mainly Italian neighborhood. And I would probably say it was lower middle class. Mm-hmm. And, I went to a Catholic grammar school, went to church every day. And,
really?
That was part of it. And, we had the old fashioned nuns all decked out in their habits. And, and, they were pretty strict. And I'm sure I was told I was going to burn in hell many times. But so far, I guess I still have that coming.
Yeah, but the discipline, I look back at the discipline, and if you came home, and you can probably confirm this, if you came home and you got a note from the nun, your parents did not go to the nun and complain about the nun. They had a problem with you.
Exactly. And what made it worse was when I got home, my mother would get the note, and she would say, "Wait till your father gets home." Oh, yeah, anticipation of death is worse than death itself.
Yeah, and that was a day and age where you would go out after school, you would get on your bike, or you go play ball with your buddies or whatever, and you wouldn't come home until night or dinner time. Your mother called you, and nobody worried about it back then. So music, though, has been in your DNA for quite a while.
Correct. I started taking piano lessons from my dad, who was a piano and violin teacher for 50 years. I was about 6 when I started, and I took 10 years of piano and actually started playing locally in bands when I was 15, 16 years old. I kind of stopped for a while when I met Donna, my wife now, and what we did was we got married. We got things together. We both had real jobs. I know people tell us that musicians don't really have real jobs. It's supposed to be fun. But then I picked it back up again in the 80s as a source of extra income. And I also started doing solo piano. And to this day, off and on, I've pretty much carried on with music. It's always been a part of my life. And I really have to thank my parents, especially my dad, for the gift of music.
Well, and I think it's a cultural thing. Music is either in your family or it's not in your family. It happened not to be part of my family, but it seems to be something that's passed on from generation to generation. When you agree with that?
Oh, I would agree. Yeah, I think when my dad was taking piano lessons, I think his dad had some music in him, as far as I'm not sure what instrument he played, but he did have an uncle that taught music in New York. And actually, my dad went up there during the summer to tutor under my uncle. So, and I had another uncle that had he had an uncle that had a music store down in Florida. So, yeah, I would say
sort
that.
Of in your DNA. Now, you made a living for yourself by tuning pianos, right?
Yes, I did.
It's got to be a different kind of business, because I think that some people probably, I would have the impression that some people would appreciate your work and some people don't know the difference.
Well, the first thing that people, the impression they get is it's actually tuning a piano is like playing an instrument, or you need to have a strong music background. It's true, it's good to have a music background, but really when you tune a piano, you have to keep your music ear out of it. You are listening for vibrations and beats, and there's a system that you use when you tune a piano. And when it's all said and done, it's a foolproof. It's a system. If you do it right, it comes out right. Oh yeah. So and I went to school for a year to learn that system. Wow. And work on it until I got it right. The first piano I ever tuned took me 4 hours. And today I can do it in an hour or even under an hour. And it's all how you hear things. But it's always nice when you're done to be able to sit down and play for your customer. So that gives them, the assurance that everything sounds great.
What's interesting is the concept that I'm thinking of. It's something artistic that's really more math and science than art.
Correct. That's what it is. Physics and math and science.
The story, let's get right away into the Music Hall of Fame. Tell that story, because the way that started is a fascinating story. You wrote a letter?
Yes, I did. Well, it all started, and again, I had a classical music background, and with my dad, and listening to him tell some stories, actually becoming involved in the music community by performing and everything, and knowing, that we had the Eastman and other music institutions, I started thinking to myself, what a great music city. And you're thinking about all these great musicians that came from Rochester. And I said, this would be a great city to have a Rochester Music Hall of Fame. And I'm really surprised that nobody has come forward with this. So I decided to put together a letter, and I sent it to the editorial page of the Democrat and Chronicle. And they posted it the following Sunday. And that following week, I got all kinds of email and phone calls saying that it was a great idea. And some people said, well, why don't we do this? And so little by little, as a grassroots movement, we started putting things together. The first meeting we had, it was a mess. We didn't know what direction we were going to go in. And everybody had different opinions on what we should do and everything. And finally, we narrowed it down, and we decided that if we're going to do this, we're going to do this right, and we're going to do it at the highest level that we can possibly do it. We owe it to Rochester, and we owe it to the musicians that have made good in their careers. And we had a launch party in 2011, and we had our first induction ceremony in 2012, and we haven't looked back since.
Well, how many people were initially a part of that group?
The very first meeting that we had to have about 25 people.
Really?
At least. Oh, yeah. And everybody was talking at once, and it was really, really tough. But then, you know what? Little by little, people dropped out. And, it was, I would say that the people that stuck with it were the people that were the most passionate about it. And it's not a knock on the people that did drop out. Maybe they had other ideas, or maybe they just couldn't devote the time to what we wanted to do. But we got it down to a hardcore group. I'm going to probably say of about a dozen. And little by little, we formed an organization. We went through the process of becoming a nonprofit. We got ourselves a charter.
Okay, you're listening to the No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm Dom Genova with my guest, Karl LaPorta, who is the founder of the Rochester Music Hall of Fame. And Karl, could you hear that music in the background?
Yeah. It seems kind of familiar.
Yeah, so why don't you explain to our listeners exactly what that was?
Well, I had a little bit of break between bands, and I had all this music rolling around in my head, and I never really had an opportunity to do anything with it. So I decided that I was going to try and make some sense of it, get into the studio, and make a CD. And that's exactly what I did. And one of the things that I did with this was I took a lot of the musicians from Rochester, especially those that I knew and had worked with, and I had them play on this CD. And actually, I had a good friend of mine, Dan Lomenzo, who produced it and also did some playing on it, too. To me, it's kind of like a legacy. It's something that I always wanted to do, a bucket list thing. Yeah. And I never intended it to make money or anything like that. It's just something that I wanted to do that I have.
It's beautiful. I'll put this on my my YouTube channel, and you can download that and whatever. But what's the title of this song?
That song is First Snowfall. And
it's absolutely beautiful. I have a question to ask you, though. We were talking about people before, and we were talking about all the people you know from the Hall of Fame. And I was looking at the website. It's what's the website address? Is
RochesterMusic.org.
Okay, RochesterMusic.org. And I look at all those people that are on the board of directors and the number of people that are involved with the association, but also talking about you and your neighborhood and your friends and whatever. You've been a Rochesterian all of your life. I mean, like, who do you hang out with? I mean, is it the people? Do they mix one with the other, or do you go out to lunch with somebody? I mean, who's your gang?
Let me tell you. First of all, I got to say, right now, if I weren't here, I would be hanging out with my buds at Tim Hortons, and that would be Lenny, Dusty, Charlie, and Tony. And actually, there's some other people there that we're with, and we're usually there every day of the week in the mornings except for Sundays. And
great. This is Lenny, Dusty. Who else and who else? Lenny, Dusty,
Charlie, and Tony.
Charlie and I'm writing this down. Tony, you need a Dominic there. There's you have.
Well, actually, there's one that doesn't belong in that group.
It's probably me. You don't want me.
No. His real name is Lacey Dustman.
Lacey.
But we let him hang with us because he's such a good guy. Okay, so here it is. It's Lenny, Cole, and Tony. Charlie Manera. Okay. Tony Muno. Okay. So can you get any more Italian than that?
No. Well, I am I'm the son of Antonia Belladora and Dominic Genova. So I know where you're going with this.
Oh, exactly.
So we only have a couple more minutes before we get into the news break, but let's talk a little bit more about the Music Hall of Fame. Now, it actually has a physical location now, right? It says Gibbs.
Yes, that is 25 Gibbs Street, and it's on the corner of East Avenue. And actually, they're in the process over there into making this a small performance hall.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they can do lectures in there. Actually book signings. It's a fabulous place, and it's perfect. It's right across the street from the Eastman Theater. Oh, yeah. And I got to give credit to the organization, to Jack Whittier, president, Tracy Croft, vice president, Tony Gross, and the rest of the board of directors. I mean, they're doing a phenomenal job with this, and it's been very tough because this will be the second year without an induction ceremony.
Oh, yeah.
So, and thank God some of our sponsors have actually stepped up, and, each year they will sponsor us, and they have done this knowing there would not be an induction ceremony. So we have to give a huge shout out to, Canandaigua National Bank, who is our main sponsor, and all the rest of them.
Well, and I was looking at the website. The number of supporters you have is really extraordinarily large. And I think one of now I've only been in Rochester since 1994 only, right? But the Music Hall of Fame, I knew about it, but I didn't know about it until I started getting into the whole deal from talking to you. But you look at some of these people that are in the Hall of Fame. Because Cab Calloway, a lot of people don't know about Cab Calloway, but people our age know Mitch Miller. I mean, that was a big thing when I was growing up. To sing along with Mitch, Lou Graham, Jack Palvino, the Rustics, Gary Lewis, and the Playboys. You got Ferd, Smith, Al Jardine, and the Dady Brothers. And we're going to talk about this when we get back from this break. But there's so much history here. It's amazing. Now, that's a Hall of Fame inductee, right, Karl?
Oh, absolutely. Lou is royalty in this town.
Lou Graham. Yeah. You're listening to the No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm your host, Dom Geneva, here with Karl LaPorta, who's the founder of the Rochester Music Hall of Fame. And if you ever listened to this show before, Karl, you know this is where, I have a segment called Shameless Self-Promotion. And I give a shout out to the people that bought my dealership, the Bob Johnson Group, who now is... the owner of Genesee Valley Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Genesee Valley Ford and Avon, your no-nonsense car dealer. And the best thing I can say about the group is that when they say something, they mean something. So $2,000 and a pen means $2,000 and a pen. And of course, you have to have acceptable credit, but it's $2,000 in a pen. You don't have to be a member of a special group or have bought a Case farm tractor in the past 12 months or be a member of the Canadian military or something like that. I mean, it's $2,000 in a pen. So that's the best thing I can say about a car dealer is that their word is good. And since we're talking about shameless self-promotion, let's talk about something we have in common. One is, I wouldn't have started the dealership 27 years ago if it wasn't for my wife. And Nita is wonderful, and she's like, well, the girls are 1 and 4. You know, we're going to take this big risk. I was working for Chrysler at the time and gave up a perfectly serviceable career to start the dealership. And it's turned out okay. It's been all right. I mean, we've done well. But with the Music Hall of Fame, I mean, you've had a lot of family support too. I know from talking to you this week.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my brother Dave and my lovely wife Donna. Donna was very supportive right from the very start. She was there, and she took on the role of board secretary. Now, there were some rumors that the president, which it was me at the time, was having an affair with the secretary. And I have to admit those rumors are true. So, but luckily, because she was my wife, it got no further than that. But at any rate, she did a phenomenal job. And, a lot of time.
How long have you been married now?
48 years.
My God, that's just wonderful. And the thing about it is it's a relationship that you have, and there's sometimes that are better than others, and whatever. You're human beings, and that's what happens. But you can't. I mean, being married 48 years, that's quite an accomplishment. God bless you.
Yeah, I don't know how she's managed to put up with it. With me.
Yeah, I have the same thing. I don't know how she's put up with it. So let's talk about putting up with people. How about that? Here's a segue. Tell me about the let's go to the light side first. Let's go to the side with the sunshine. Where of the people that are in the Hall of Fame, do you have any that are particularly your favorite or most interesting, or where would you? If I was to ask you who fascinated you the most, or you're most interested in, who would it be?
Well, first of all, every inductee was phenomenal in their own rights, and but there was, for me, what I would say were surprises. And I think the biggest surprise was Charles Strauss. Yeah, he was an inductee in 2012. Now, Charles wrote the score for Annie and Bye Bye Birdie. He also wrote the theme for All in the Family.
Really?
Yes, he did. And he also wrote a song that was recorded by, it's slipping my memory right now, but it was a top 10 song. It was called Born Too Late. It was 50s, 60s. But here, a wonderful man. He's 85 years old. His memory was maybe not as sharp as it was back, when he was in his prime. And we're running through the show prior to the show, actually. And, he's playing his music and he's trying to remember different things. So we were a little bit nervous that, maybe he might forget. As soon as that show started, he went through it. He was playing like he was 20 years old. He was singing and he was magnificent. He was telling jokes. He was telling stories between each segment, and he received probably one of the largest standing ovations of anybody.
I've heard of that before. I heard a story about Johnny Cash like that, where in his older years, people were worried about him and is he going to get on stage? And then when he got on stage, he became a completely younger person. He got on stage and he was 79 or 80 at the time. And he became 25 when he got on stage.
He was amazing. He was an amazing man. And I'll never forget that. Of course, I'm not going to forget any of them. We had in the first year, we also had a flautist by the name of Dorio Anthony Dwyer, and she was the first woman that ever sat in an orchestra. And when she came here and performed, she was in her early 90s. Wow! And it was just wonderful.
I think God just gives some people gifts. How do you figure this out? How do you figure this out that somebody just knows how to do something? They have the talent. I mean, not everybody you teach piano to can make music, right?
Correct. You're right.
We're about ready to get into a break, but when we come back, I want to ask you a little bit more about the inductees. I mean, how does it happen? How does somebody get nominated? What is the process to get elected? And after COVID is over, what kind of presentation do you have, and what type of an affair is it, and where is it held? I mean, I want to get a little bit into that about the Hall of Fame. I mean, certainly there's a lot to talk about here, and we're going to talk a little bit more about people that and people that have surprised you too. Okay, that music is the Beach Boys, and one of the inductees was Al Jardine, right?
Yes, it was. It was actually the last induction ceremony that we had until we were rudely interrupted by this pandemic.
Oh, and this pandemic. I mean, eventually it'll be over. Anybody who's just tuned in, you're listening to the No Nonsense Roundtable. I am your host, Dom Genova, with I think my new best friend here, which is Karl LaPorta. Karl, we have so many things in common in our background. It's really a pleasure meeting you.
It's the same here, Dom.
Let's get a little bit more into the weeds about the Hall of Fame itself, the Rochester Music Hall of Fame. And how does somebody get nominated, and how did they get elected, if you would use the word elected? And then tell me about the ceremony itself. I mean, we have a few minutes left, and I think we can get that all in the time we do have left.
Okay, that sounds good. We have a selection committee on our board of directors. Mm-hmm. And, it's made up of mainly musicians. Actually, I can say all musicians. But these guys don't totally make the decision themselves. They go out and they talk to different people, about prospective inductees. We call them nominees. Mm-hmm. And they have to collect all the information and their, which is mostly credentials onto.
So could I nominate somebody that just as an outside person?
I was just going to get to that. We have a nomination page on our website, and many people go to that, and we put weight in that too. And when people go to our website and they nominate somebody, we always tell them the more information you can give us, the better. We don't care if it's 10 pages long, if somebody has those kinds of credentials. And plus the fact that saves time for us in looking everything up. Although, we have to verify everything. But it's not an easy process because, we have to be careful about the different genres. We can't make it too rock and roll heavy, or we can't make it too jazz heavy. I mean, there have been some years when we may have had, a couple of jazz musicians or groups inducted, but generally we try and spread things out. And you don't normally have to be a musician. Anything related to music, where would Rochester be without George Eastman?
Right. Now, you have to have some type of connection to Rochester, though. I just can't. I mean, I can't nominate, Sir Paul McCartney for this.
No, you can, but he's not going to. He's not going to
nominate anybody you want. But
although we'd love to draw,
we're not going to accept him. That's yes.
Right.
I kind of get that. That makes sense. And so the nominating committee gets these individuals, and then you submit it to the executive committee. All told, they're the general population of people that are members, or I mean, how does that go?
Okay, once the selection committee decides on this year's inductees, and again, it is agonizing, it is time consuming, and only because we probably have 100 pages or more of potential inductees that are nominees that are qualified. So, and sometimes we get a little bit of criticism because people are wondering, why isn't so-and-so being inducted yet? And they will, but we can't induct them all at once. We can only induct 4 or 5 at the most per year. To make the show reasonable.
And the presentation is usually at the Eastman Theater. Is that where it is?
Oh, it's always at the Eastman Theater's Kodak Hall. And I got to tell you, a lot of our inductees, when they hear that it's going to be held at the Eastman Theater, their eyes light up. Because, there were many of them either had studied at the Eastman. Or
the national reputation of the Eastman.
Yes, and the national reputation. And there are actually musicians that never went to the Eastman that were so looking forward to performing there. It was one of the things that they wanted to do in their life, believe it or not.
Well, we are ending up the show, but let's give a shout out before it's too long to Lenny, Dusty, Charlie, and Tony, which we know are listening, and thank you for listening, guys. As everybody else, Karl, thank you for coming on the show. We have a lot in common, and I admire what you have done. And come back someday.
Oh, I'd love to, and thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.